Siddhartha Gautama was born a prince. He lived in a magnificent palace. His life was filled with every pleasure imaginable. Yet, a nagging emptiness lingered in his heart. He felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage. The prince yearned for something more, a deeper truth beyond the walls of his luxurious prison. His spirit longed for liberation. One day the prince ventured out of the palace. He had never seen the world outside. His sheltered life had shielded him from reality. On that fateful day, he encountered suffering for the first time. He saw an old man bent with age. He saw a sick man, racked with pain. Then he saw a dead man, his lifeless eyes staring into eternity. These sights shook him to his core. The prince returned to the palace a changed man. The encounter with suffering had awakened a profound sense of urgency within him. He realized the impermanence of life. He understood that even his own privilege could not shield him from old age, sickness, and death. He knew he had to find a way out of this cycle of suffering. The prince decided to renounce his royal life. He left behind his palace, his family, and all worldly possessions. He chose to become a wandering ascetic. His heart yearned for true liberation. Siddhartha, now a simple seeker of truth, embarked on a journey to find an end to suffering. He sought wisdom from renowned teachers. He immersed himself in their teachings and practices. He mastered various forms of meditation. He pushed his body to the limits of endurance through extreme asceticism. Years passed, filled with rigorous discipline and self-denial. Yet despite his efforts, true enlightenment remained elusive. Siddhartha realized that simply following the doctrines of others would not lead him to his goal. He questioned the very nature of his quest. He began to understand that true wisdom must come from within. Siddhartha's journey led him to a group of ascetics. They believed that denying the body was the path to enlightenment. They practiced extreme fasting and self-mortification. Siddhartha joined them, pushing himself to the very edge of human endurance. Years passed in this relentless pursuit of enlightenment through deprivation. Siddhartha grew incredibly thin and weak. He was on the verge of death. One day, while bathing in a river, he collapsed from exhaustion. A young woman found him and offered him rice milk. This simple act of kindness was a turning point. Siddhartha realized that his extreme practices had led him astray. He understood that denying the body did not lead to enlightenment. It only weakened him. He saw the need for a balanced approach, a middle way between indulgence and self-denial. With renewed determination, Siddhartha decided to change his approach. He remembered a time in his youth when he had spontaneously entered a state of deep meditation. This memory gave him hope. He resolved to sit in meditation until he reached enlightenment. He chose a place under a sacred fig tree, known as the Bodhi tree. There he vowed to remain until he found the answers he sought. Siddhartha sat with unwavering focus, his mind still and clear. He delved deep into the nature of suffering, its causes, and its cessation. After 49 days of continuous meditation, on the full moon of May, Siddhartha attained enlightenment. He finally saw the truth about suffering and the path to its cessation. He became the Buddha, the awakened one. Upon his enlightenment, the Buddha formulated the Four Noble Truths, the foundation of his teachings. These truths offer a clear understanding of the nature of suffering. The first noble truth: life is inherently filled with suffering. This suffering encompasses physical and emotional pain, as well as the dissatisfaction that arises from our attachment to impermanent things. The second noble truth: suffering arises from craving and attachment. We crave pleasure, permanence, and self-gratification, which ultimately leads to disappointment and dissatisfaction. The third noble truth: suffering can be overcome by eliminating craving and attachment. By letting go of our desires and clinging, we can find true peace and liberation. The fourth noble truth: there is a path to the cessation of suffering, known as the Eightfold Path. This path provides a practical framework for cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. The Eightfold Path is the Buddha's prescription for overcoming suffering and attaining enlightenment. It is a path of gradual training that encompasses all aspects of our being: wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Right understanding. developing a clear understanding of the Four Noble Truths, right intention, cultivating thoughts and motivations rooted in kindness, compassion, and non-harming. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and with awareness, avoiding harmful speech. Right action, acting ethically, refraining from harming oneself or others. Right livelihood, earning a living in a way that is ethical and does not cause harm. Right effort, cultivating wholesome qualities and abandoning unwholesome ones. Right mindfulness, developing awareness of the present moment, observing thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. Right concentration, developing deep concentration and mental clarity through meditation. The Buddha's teachings were not confined to abstract concepts. He shared his wisdom through stories and encounters that resonated with people's everyday lives. One day, as the Buddha walked through a bustling marketplace, he encountered a young mother. Kisa Gotami was her name. Her face was stained with tears. She clutched a small, lifeless body in her arms, her only child. "Please, sir," she cried, her voice filled with anguish. "You seem to be a kind and wise man. Can you help me? My baby is dead. I need medicine to bring him back to life." The Buddha looked at her with compassion. He understood her pain, the raw, primal grief of a mother who had lost her child. He saw an opportunity to teach her a profound lesson about the nature of life and death. "I can help you," the Buddha said gently. "But first, you must bring me a mustard seed from a house that has never known death." Kisa Gotami's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. She clutched her child tightly and ran from house to house, desperately seeking the impossible. At each door, she asked for a mustard seed, explaining her plight. But every house she visited had experienced the sting of death. Every family had lost loved ones, parents, children, friends. The universality of death became heartbreakingly clear. As the sun began to set, Kisa Gotami sat down by the roadside, her child's body still in her arms. The weight of her grief felt unbearable, yet a strange sense of peace began to settle over her. She realized that death was not something that happened only to her. It was an inevitable part of life, a truth that everyone must face. Her own suffering, though profound, was not unique. Kisa Gotami returned to the Buddha. He had been waiting for her. He knew that she had finally understood. "Have you found the mustard seed?" he asked gently. Kisa Gotami shook her head. "No, Lord," she whispered. "I have learned that death comes to all beings. It is a part of life." The Buddha nodded. "You have discovered a great truth," he said. "Clinging to that which is impermanent only brings suffering. True happiness comes from understanding and accepting the nature of reality." The Buddha's encounter with Kisa Gotami illustrates a fundamental principle of his teachings. True happiness and peace are not found in external circumstances, but in our own minds. By letting go of attachment, cultivating compassion, and understanding the impermanence of all things, we can free ourselves from suffering. The Buddha's teachings, known as the Dharma, spread throughout India and beyond. His message of compassion, wisdom, and liberation from suffering has resonated with people of all cultures and backgrounds for over 2,500 years. The Buddha's legacy is not confined to temples and monasteries. His teachings continue to offer guidance and inspiration to people seeking meaning, purpose, and inner peace in a world often filled with suffering and uncertainty. The Buddha's path is not just a set of beliefs, but a way of life. It is a call to action, an invitation to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and ethical conduct in our daily lives. We can all benefit from the Buddha's teachings, regardless of our religious beliefs or backgrounds. By practicing mindfulness, cultivating kindness, and letting go of attachment, we can find greater peace, happiness, and fulfillment in our own lives, and contribute to a more compassionate and just world. The journey to enlightenment is a personal one. It begins with a single step. As the Buddha said, "You yourselves must strive. The Buddhas only point the way."